thought to do a video on the range selection process in Pixinsight, and to put it in context, what we've got here are two images, the sort of before and the after. On the left hand side we've got a Pixinsight stack and integration of 1017 10-second subs of the Eastern Veil Nebula, and on the right hand side you can see my final processed image. If you look at the one on the left, there's a few issues which I find are fairly typical with the Stellina stacks, and in fact the TIFFs and the JPEGs too, so it's just something we've got to deal with really. First issue I notice is that we've got this black banding around the side, I think down to alignment errors. We've also got quite a noisy background, lots of colour there which we want to try and work out. It's going to be difficult to sort of separate the already colourful nebula from this colourful background, so that's going to be a challenge, and that's where the range selection process comes in. And thirdly, and I'm not going to cover this in any detail in this video just to try and keep it short, so I'll probably do a second one on it, is the stars. In my personal view, there's just so many stars here, it detracts from the nebula. So there's just too many stars. When you zoom in, you can see that they're not particularly round, they're a bit egg-shaped. That's obviously down to some tracking errors. And we've got some of the brightest stars are oversaturated. We've lost the color, so it's showing as white. And there's also a degree of blue fringing as well. So how I process the stars, I say, will be done in a separate video. So this one's really a quick how I got from here to here, but emphasizing the range selection process, which I think is a really useful process to get to understand and use, especially for processing backgrounds like this. So the first step is, let's just move this one out of the way. I might refer to it later. Let's stick it up here out of the way. So the first thing I want to address is this edge, black edge down here. The simplest thing to do is to crop it. So you could do process, all processes, dynamic crop. Click the reset, and I usually zoom out a little bit so you can see the full edge. And then just drag in the edge sliders just to remove those black edges, like so. And let's just do that one as well, even though I can't see anything, but I'm sure there'll be something there later. Let's apply that, see how that looks. Yeah, that's sorted that one out, so that's the dynamic crop. That's the first thing, so we can close that down. The next thing I want to do is to separate the stars from the background. So what we do here, we use this StarNet2 process. The green bar down the side here tells me it's still linear, which we know because we've not stretched it yet. So we'll set this to linear and run this, and this will take a few seconds to run. So I'll stop the video and come back when it's finished. Right, the StarNet2 process is finished. It took about a minute or so on my PC. And what we're left with, I can close that down, we've got a star mask, which I'm going to ignore because these are the horrible stars. So we're going to throw that away. Gone. And what we're left is with this background. And it just emphasizes all the more just what an awful background this is to try and deal with. So this is the main bit we're going to be working on next, is how to work on that. But before we could do that, I think whilst we're linear, it's an opportunity to try and address some of this noise. So what I'm going to do is just apply the noise exterminator with the default settings directly to it. It's a linear image. Let's just run that. That'll take a few seconds, so I'll pause the video. The noise exterminator script process is finished. This is what we've got left, so we can get rid of that. I noticed there's some potential banding going up and down here, which we might try and address. So we're going to run a try. This might not work. We'll give it a go. We'll try running the Canon banding what's it called? Forgotten. Canon banding reduction script against it, but it only works if it's horizontal banding. So as a temporary thing, I'm just going to rotate this counterclockwise like that. Okay, and let's just run the script against that just to see if it makes any improvement whatsoever. I'll just leave it at the default setting of 1. See what happens. It's made it a little bit better. Yeah, I'll run with that. So let's get that image back as it was, the same geometry. So rotate it clockwise. And let's resize, refit. Okay, that's finished. What I'm going to do now is to permanently stretch this. So I'm going to start off with the arcsine H stretch process, and I'm not going to push it further than that. Let's apply that as it is. That's what we've got. Now let's use the histogram transformation process to see what we can do with this. It's not going to be very good because already we can see before we've even fully stretched it, there's lots of chromatic noise in the background. But let's see what we can do. So I'm just going to try and shape this around this peak, this histogram here, as reasonably best as I can. I'm going to leave it at that. We'll apply that, close that down, and that's what we've got so far. Now, as we suspected, the background is truly awful. So the next step, we're going to apply the range selection process to apply a mask, and this will make all the difference. First, I'm going to show you why I think we need the range selection process or some form of mask, because if we were to try and work this image without any masks, this is the sort of thing we'll get. So let's just do a curves on this unmasked image, set a preview, and let's see if we can try and dial out this color in the background. Unfortunately, because there's no mask, it's going to apply to everything. So let's set the saturation and see if we can bring it down. Yep, it's certainly bringing down the background color, but it's also taking the color of the nebula with it too. So that's going to be tricky. Can't do that. So let's reset that one. Let's try the brightness. Let's see if we can bring that background down. We can. We're still keeping some nebula, but we're losing it. So maybe we can do the S shape, the standard S shape that works so well. Well, it's not so bad. It's better, but we've still got that colored background, and we're getting quite a contrasty image, which I don't know, may look a bit forced. If you want it to look a bit more natural, we've got to bring it out, but of course we get the background back again. So yeah, obviously we need to apply some form of mask to separate nebula to background, and that's what range selection will do. So I'm going to cancel this because we're not going to apply that. And the next thing, we're going to use range selection here. So we can see that in order to dial out this background and enhance this nebula, we need some sort of mask to separate the two, separate the background from the nebula. Now, there are a number of ways of creating a mask, but my preferred choice is the range selection process. If you click preview, use this top slider, you can see you can bring more in, more out. Now, the way it's going to work is everything in white will be sort of like accepted for further change. Everything black will be masked out. In other words, you can't change it. I'll explain that better as we go along, but for now, let's set the fuzziness all the way across to the right and drag this here. So I'm just going to try and move these sliders around to certainly see the image. If we drag this to the left slowly, you can see it's bringing in more background. Now, ideally, we've got a black background like that, but that's at the cost of losing the edges of this nebula. If we bring in the edges of the nebula, we're also bringing in some of the background as well. So it's not a clean thing, this. We're going to have to make a judgment call. I want to find somewhere along this top slider, looking at the left-hand side at the same time, where we've got the nebula but some background. And I think that's about right. Now what I can do is, it's best to slightly blur the image because I don't think it'll matter too much in this instance because it's quite lots of rope-like filaments and quite fine detail anyway. But when we're applying the mask and applying the curves tool to the masked image, we want any edges where the mask are to be blurred. We don't want any harsh lines. So a little bit of blurring there. And we'll apply that. This isn't 100% right because where the background is, we've still got some noise. So we need to work on that, and that's the next step. I'm just going to apply that, close this down, and at this stage we've got the mask that we need to work on.